Imagine you're roaming the Mojave, looking for a Deathclaw to kill. You wander until you stumble across the Deathclaw promontory, you line up your shot, but instead of this, it's this. Are you still feeling confident? No. No, you are not. But what if the whole game felt like that? Can you beat Fallout New Vegas using only the Varmint rifle? Let's go over the rules real quick. 1. The only weapon I am allowed to use is the Varmint rifle. I can equip attachments to it, but I did not allow myself to use the Rat Slayer. 2. I cannot utilize sneak attacks with the Varmint rifle, but it is okay to use sneak to bypass enemies or steal items. That's it for the rules. It's also set to very hard hardcore mode. Ready? Let's go. Character creation was rather tame this time around. Aptly named Pesky Varmint, I went for the look of someone that would be both a bother and a menace. I rolled out of bed and allocated my special stats, and here they are. I went with maxed out agility for better gun skill at the start, and also because I wanted my character to be a VATS heavy build, though that ultimately didn't pan out so well. Next, I chose my tag skills, which were guns, medicine, and repair. I also picked the fast shot and kamikaze traits. With that done, I could leave Doc Mitch's house and begin my journey of pain and suffering. As soon as I stepped out into the blinding desert sun, somewhere deep in Pesky Varmint's bullet-addled brain, he realized something very important. Aside from the most basic of life-sustaining skills, he would have to relearn how to do everything, guns included. I sold what little I had to Chet, and he directed me to Sunny Smiles, who could teach me to use a gun. What she gave me would be the first, last, and only weapon that I'd ever use. You know, it's not half bad. At shooting bottles off of a fence. But either way, we had our weapon, and we were ready to initiate the Ghost Town gunfight quest for some of that sweet, easy experience. To save time, I sat with Ringo and prepared my respective holes for a brawl. Not gonna lie, there is a reason I never used the Varmint rifle after a few hours in New Vegas. It sucks. It sucks big time. That, and I can only get 3 shots with the rifle in VATS, which is not okay for a VATS build. Still, the powder gangers were easy as always, and I didn't level up after completion because I suck, I guess. After what was easily the most epic battle in the history of warfare, I continued onward to Prim, fighting the occasional powder ganger along the way, which leveled me up to 2. I put my points into guns, and picked Rapid Reload as my perk. This is especially handy to have since I have to reload often owing to the 5-round capacity of the Varmint rifle. A few more powder gangers and some geckos later and we're in Prim, being hassled by an NCR trooper on a power trip. I ignored his warnings and pressed on. Our goal in Prim was to talk to Johnson Nash for a bit of info on the package I was delivering, and for some easy experience in the way of murdering convicts. I picked up some surplus ammo for the Varmint rifle that actually did more damage than a normal bullet, at the cost of 3 times the damage to my gun's condition. This is what we in the business call a terrible option, but what can you do when you're desperate for ammo? The convicts were still fairly easy to kill at this point in the game, and before I knew it, Deputy Beagle was rescued. After that, I went upstairs to finish the rest, get some spare Varmint rifles for repair, and level up to 3, where I put all of my points into guns. With that squared away, I could speak to Beagle about the men who attacked me, and in the process find a new sheriff for Prim. Then I headed to Novak via Nipton. The walk there was quiet, except for a surprise bark scorpion out of nowhere. When I arrived at Nipton, I spotted a man who looked strangely familiar, though he didn't stay recognizable for long. I tried to blow his head clean off after he died, but the Varmint rifle isn't even strong enough to do that, I guess. Of course, boxcars had to die as well. I couldn't leave Oliver alone in the great wasteland in the sky after all, and the Legion let me live so I could spread word of their atrocities, which I would do for some easy experience. A few Jackal gang members made the trip there a bit harder than it needed to be, but I arrived relatively intact. I stopped in at the store, then checked in with both Ghost and Sergeant Kilborn for that juicy XP. This leveled me up to 4, where I put my points into guns once again, and picked the Educated perk for more skill points at level up. While I was here, I decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Ranger Jackson needed someone to clear out the ants on the main road, and I needed to increase my stock of high-grade ammunition such as armor-piercing rounds and hollow points. Said ants were suspiciously cooperative, and in no time at all, quest done, ammo acquired. After that, I returned to Chet to buy a few things, then moseyed over to the NCR Correctional Facility in hopes of recruiting Myers as the new sheriff of Prim. The problem with that is there's only one of me with a single Varmint rifle, and a lot of them with many Varmint rifles. Oh, and Dawes with his stupid revolver. Fuck you, Dawes. After that failure, I decided that Prim would be run by the NCR because it's the easiest option at this time. I leveled up to 5, nearly maxed out my guns, and continued on my way to Novak through the valley of Bighorners and Vipers. Picking a fight with a Bighorner in this state is a terrible idea, so let's just stick with the Vipers, who are considerably easier to kill. Now on the other side, I took a break from my trip to watch some Legionaries get their poo pushed back in, then looted the aftermath. I also spent way too long trying to kill a large group of Vipers. I eventually succeeded and arrived in Novak, slightly shaken but alive. I stopped at the doctor and Cliff Briscoe's for some useful gear, and then talked to Manny Vargas of all people. That's right folks, we're doing Come Fly With Me, a quest that always breaks my game whenever I attempt it. Why am I doing this quest then? A, experience, and B, I'm apparently not in enough pain from New Vegas constantly breaking as it is. There's usually some sort of enemy on my way to RepCon, but no one bothered me as I looted the camp halfway there. The handful of ghouls outside RepCon gave me little trouble, but the inside was littered with them. Thankfully, the Varmint rifle is still effective enough against these early game enemies, and I was talking to Chris and Jason before I knew it. Of course, every era of peace and tranquility needs some misery and pain, and that's just what the Nightkin in the basement brought to me. They were fast, invisible, and quite hard to kill with my little pea shooter. Did I mention they were fast? I think the only reason I finished this quest at all was the fact that I could cripple their legs and make them move at the speed of molasses. Of course, it still burnt through a lot of ammo and therefore gun durability, but eventually I was fighting Davies and put him down like the oversized varmint he is. Back to Jason, he and his group of ghastly ghouls had ventured into the basement. I followed only to be sent on a fetch quest for thrust controls and toy rocket ships. I made sure to stop by Cliff Briscoe's for a singular rocket, then I made a trip to Chet's for more supplies. Old Lady Gibson made me pay an arm and a leg for the thrust controls, but I obliged, and returned to Chris hoping to complete the quest. But that was not how it happened. Apparently you need at least 5 toy rocket ships to complete this quest. I did not have, nor actually know that you needed 5, as I almost always steal the whole closet full from Cliff. I guess it's true what they say, you do indeed learn something new every day. After a quick trip back to Cliff's, now with the toy rockets in hand, the real rockets could prepare for takeoff. Oh, I'm so excited. Is it gonna crash? Is it gonna crash? You bet your sweet ass it's gonna crash. After the crash, I reloaded the save and leveled up to 6 and maxed out my guns, then started working on my repair. I picked the toughness perk since having extra DT is always a good thing, and with my game thoroughly broken, I toggled collision and escaped from the window. Don't like it? Too bad. Moving on. I returned to Manny and got some info on the man who shot me. He apparently went to Boulder City, so that's where I was headed. On the way, I helped a traveling merchant and her entourage kill some vipers, then clear the dry lake of fire ants for that nice, easy experience. I leveled up to 7, threw the points into medicine this time around since it would only get harder from here on out, and arrived at the 188 trading post looking for some ammo to buy. Freshly restocked, I made the uncharacteristically peaceful journey to Boulder City and decided to help out the NCR by negotiating with the Great Khans for their hostages. It also gave me the opportunity to talk to Jessup about Benny, who apparently was now in the Strip, hiding out in the Tops Casino. Does this man never stop moving? Annoyed, I leveled up to 8, dumped my points into repair, and picked the second rank of the toughness perk. Then I decided to leave the Khans alone for now in favor of coming back later so I didn't spoil my relationship with them. Now I was off to the Strip in search of the man who shot me in the head. I also finally remembered that I have mods for my Varmint rifle. I ultimately went with 2 rifles, one with an extended mag and a silencer even though there was no real need for the silencer, and one with a scope and an extended mag for any long-range encounters I might have. Nothing bothered me on the way to New Vegas, thankfully, and I made my way to the sacked caravan to rustle up some decent armor and a few items to sell to the gunrunners. At last, Freeside. Now all I had to do was enter the Strip. If I hadn't spent all of my caps on ammo and other supplies. That's right, I made it all the way here just to forget that I needed 2,000 caps for entry. I think that bullet did more damage to my brain than I thought. It's okay though, I had a plan B. Oh, hello there, Camp McCarran. Certainly hope I'm not interrupting anything. Instead of making a beeline straight to the monorail, I decided to hit up Major Daughtry and help him get rid of a few unwanted fiends in the area. It was here I decided that I'd be doing an NCR playthrough. The first fiend I went after was Cook, since there was only room for one crazy chef in the whole of Fallout, and that was Chef Ray RB. This is when the challenge started to ramp up in difficulty. See, fiends, while not the hardest to kill, seem to end up having weapons that do pretty solid damage to me. Now, in a normal playthrough, I wouldn't have a problem since I'd kill them faster than they could kill me. But this is the Varmint rifle we're talking about. It has at max 8 bullets, and that was with the extended mag. And having to reload all the time, no matter how fast I do it, is a pain in the ass and eats up valuable killing time. And we hadn't even made it to Cook yet. He was a pain too. The only saving grace I had were atomic cocktails and fire ant nectar. Thankfully, I discovered that I could shoot his weapon out of his hand, and after enough of my bullshit, he had a mental breakdown and decided to just give up and die. Back to Daughtry, I was rewarded and took my next contract, Violet. There's not much to say about Violet, just a crazy girl and her dogs. Granted, Violet did a crap ton of damage and I had to hide behind cover, but she was a lot easier than Cook. The last bounty was on Driver Neffy, who was really good in the fairway. Before that though, I stopped at the old Mormon fort for some chems and medicine, then made my way to Driver Neffy's crib. Thankfully, all of his followers were dumb and insisted on rushing me, where I was able to put them in their place. Driver Neffy was a man with a golf club fighting a man with a gun, so we all knew how that was going to play out. Surprisingly, I managed to break his club before he died, forcing him to grab a combat knife as a replacement, but to no avail. Pro tip, don't bring a golf club to a gunfight. I returned to Major Daughtry and got my reward, leveled up to 9, put my points in repair and medicine, then made my way to Vault 3, home of the Fiends. I really wanted to clear the Fiends out for the NCR, but there was a problem. A very blatant problem. Plasma rifles. They do a ton of damage to me, especially since I don't have that much armor. Try after try, I would either get killed by the fiend with the plasma rifle or some other asshole who'd pick up said plasma rifle from the dead fiend holding it. I eventually killed the plasma rifle fiend and simply gave up the fight for now in favor of going on a supply run, then it was straight back to Vault 3 to try again. For some reason once I came back, it was much easier, probably because I was chemmed out of my mind. Sadly, this ends our cleansing of Vault 3, as when I actually entered the vault, I was immediately turned into compost. After that, I decided it was finally time to head to the strip via the monorail. Of course, I didn't have an NCR uniform on, but for some reason, even though they shoot at you, you don't lose any karma with the NCR for just running in and getting on the monorail, so no harm, no foul, I guess. The first stop on the strip was to the Lucky 38 so I could discuss the Platinum chip with Mr. House. The second stop was to the Tops to deal with Benny, and by deal with, I mean let him live since I couldn't sneak in my Varmint rifle. Of course, I still had to go up to the suite and deal with his goons, so I had to run away. After I fled the Tops, for some reason I went back inside to talk to Yes Man. Thankfully, the angry chairmen were nowhere to be found. Once I was done, I leveled up to 10, put the points into medicine, and picked the handloader perk so I could make some better ammo for the Varmint rifle. I made a few pit stops, then ventured to the Hoover Dam so I could fast travel to it later, and also so I could buy some ammo from the quartermaster. Sadly, I did not have a high enough speech skill to convince him to sell dangerous weapons to me yet, but eventually I would. Now it was time to kill another 2 birds with 1 stone, Caesar and Benny. The ghouls on the way there were much harder to deal with than the ones in Repcon, but nevertheless, I persisted and arrived at Cottonwood Cove largely unscathed. I took the barge to the fort where I spoke to Caesar, Benny, Lucius, and Vulpus, then went down to the weather station to activate House's Securitron army. Armor-piercing rounds were quite handy down here, and in no time at all I had activated the Securitrons. Back to Caesar, and I got to decide how Benny died. Crucifixion, obviously, and as he suffered, I leveled up to 11, put the points in speech, and declined to help Caesar any further, though I would eventually do Vulpus and Lucius's respective quests. Before I started to get too deep into the NCR's questline, I returned to Mr. House, gave him the chip, and bugged the Lucky 38 for the followers. I leveled up to 12 here, put the points into speech again, and picked the sniper perk. While my base speech wasn't 50, I could increase it with skill mags and booze, so I went back to the Hoover Dam, passed the speech check with the world's most handsome quartermaster, and bought as much ammo as I could carry. Once I was stocked up, I made my way to Vault 21 so I could kill a couple of Omerta thugs for Vulpus' quest, returned to Vulpus, made some fat stacks, and finally decided to meet up with Ambassador Crocker. Crocker's first task was simple. I had to meet up with the boomers at Nellis Air Force Base and convince them to help us defend the Hoover Dam. On the way there, I got to fight a rad scorpion, which was not nearly as fun as I imagined it. I also got blown to bits by the boomers because I haven't played Fallout New Vegas in quite some time. Of course, a little turbo goes a long way. Before I knew it, I was at the gate and escorted off to talk to Mother Pearl. She had her own set of quests for me to do, and the first one was ants misbehaving. Surprisingly, the giant ants weren't as hard to kill as I thought they'd be, and I finished in record time. Next, I helped Argyle by taking care of his patients. Then, I learned the boomers' history from some snot-nosed little punk, and a few questions later, bam, now the boomers love me. I talked to Pearl and Loyal and agreed to help them get the Lady of the Water out of the lake. If you don't know who the Lady of the Water is, it's a giant pre-war bomber plane that the boomers are going to fix, somehow, and fly over the Hoover Dam during the next battle. Not sure how they're going to fix a 200-year-old sunken bomber in a couple of in-game days, but I'm sure they'll find a way. With that done, the boomers now idolized me and swore their aid to the NCR when the time came. I also got to take the howitzer firing mechanism and bring it back to Lucius for some experience. Back to Ambassador Crocker with the good news, and he had already had another quest lined up for me. I was to, somehow, magically stop the violence in Freeside. What a vague task. Why they think one man can stop the violence is beyond me, but I suppose I'll give it the old college try. So I was off to Freeside to talk to the one and only King. I figured if I could get in the King's good side, he might be able to help me stop the violence in Freeside. Thankfully, he did have some work for me in the form of outing a certain bodyguard who had been drumming up quite a bit of repeat business. I went to this Horus guy, gave him the 200 caps for his services, and watched him trounce around Freeside like he owned the place. That was until he tried to kill 4 people with 3 shots. After a quick examination of the bodies, I realized they were all still quite alive, outed Horus as a fraud, and made my way back to the King. The next part of the quest saw me talk to a couple of Freeside residents who knew someone that had been beaten in the night, apparently by NCR soldiers. I returned to the King with this news, and he had me go back to the Mormon fort to talk to Julie Farkas, who then in turn told me to talk to Major Elizabeth Kieran. The only way I'd be able to talk to Elizabeth is if I passed a quiz given by one of a few missionaries around Freeside, which seemed pretty unreasonable to ask a guy with recent brain trauma to do, but I digress. Once I had passed the quiz, I was able to go into the food den where Major Elizabeth was located and figure out why Freeside citizens weren't being served food. It was apparently because the NCR sent an envoy to talk to the King, and they returned brutally beaten. And this quest is getting boring, so I'm going to shorten it up to 5 words or less. Pacer is a little bitch. And just like that, the violence in Freeside was solved, and nobody fought again anywhere ever. The end. If you'd wanted to hear the full story of solving the violence problem in Freeside and are upset that I skipped over it, feel free to call this number, 1-800-FUM8. Back to the lovely Ambassador Crocker. He's pleased with my work and sends me to the Hoover Dam to meet up with Colonel Moore. I also leveled up to 14 here, maxed out my medicine, and put the remaining points on repair, picking the fast metabolism perk for better stim-pack healing. Not wanting to waste any time, I fast-traveled straight to Hoover Dam, bought some ammo from my beloved quartermaster, then met up with the aforementioned Colonel Moore about our mission for me. I was to stop the Great Khans from teaming up with Caesar's Legion in whatever manner I saw fit. Considering I doubt the Varmint rifle could take out all of the Great Khans, I went with a more diplomatic approach. Just kidding, I went to Vault 3 again, home of the Fiends, because I'm an idiot. Of course, that operation didn't last long, again, so I finally made my way to the Khans. Side note, fire geckos suck, though the Bighorner were actually killable this time. When I arrived at Red Rock Canyon, I met with Papa Khan, the most fatherly of Khans, the papa of everyone, and I asked him to cut ties with Caesar's Legion. Unsurprisingly, he did not like that and threatened me with various acts of violence, so I left. I didn't expect to be greeted by Regis, who just moments ago was sitting down during my conversation with Papa, so I have no idea how we got out here so fast. He wanted to cut ties with Caesar's Legion, but he wouldn't publicly express these feelings without good reason. I'd also need to convince some other major members of the tribe to speak out against the treaty with Caesar. Thankfully, Regis wasn't hard to convince, as I already had the notebook he was looking for from a previous incursion to the fort. Jack and Diane weren't hard to convince either, as I just had to bring their buddy Anders back, who was conveniently crucified outside of Cottonwood Cove. Melissa, though. Oh, Melissa. Why do you have to be in the absolute armpit of the Mojave? Not only is Melissa surrounded by Deathclaws, there are also giant rad scorpions and cazadors, neither of which are fun to fight. Thankfully, I had an extra stealth boy, so I was able to avoid most full frontal conflict. And once I got to Melissa, there weren't even any speech checks I needed to pass. I just had to say that Caesar doesn't like women, and that was that. Back to Papa Khan, he still needed a little convincing about what his tribe would do if he wasn't with Caesar, so I hit up the followers and they pointed me out to Ezekiel, who gave me the most wonderful book in the world. Pretty Horsies, A History of the Mongol Empire. If there is some sort of joke here, I don't understand it. With the book in my possession, all I had to do was go back to Papa Khan and he would cut ties with Caesar and leave when the Battle of Hoover Dam happened. Time to go back to the dam, buy some more ammo from the only quartermaster for me, and then return to the colonel for my next quest. I was to out the Omertas if they were doing something illegal, and considering it's the Omertas who own a casino that's literally called Gamora, they were likely doing something illegal. Allegedly, they were smuggling guns into the strip, and that was a big no-no. Thankfully, one of the lower members of the Omertas, Kachino, knew about this and kept a journal on his person that conveniently had incriminating evidence in it. When I showed him his journal, he offered to pay me for it, but also offered to help me take down his boss's gun operation. He pointed me to two people, Clandon and Troik. Clandon was useless, but Troik was not. If I could get him out of his contract with Big Sal, an Omerta boss, he would help me destroy the guns they were smuggling. Sadly, the speech check to get Troik out of his contract was not something I could do without lots of drugs and magazines, and since I didn't have enough of either, I had to go on a long trip to many different vendors in an attempt to get the stuff I needed. When I finally returned to Gamora to talk to Big Sal, he was broken. No, I mean literally broken, like I walked through his uncomfortably permeable corpse broken. A quick leave and re-entry of the Gamora fixed that problem thankfully, and Big Sal agreed to let Troik go. Now that he was free, Troik gave me the down low on how he was going to destroy the guns. Thermite. He handed me said thermite, I went into the basement where the guns were kept, placed it, and hit the magic faulty light switch that caused the thermite to explode, blinding me through a shut door somehow. With that done, it was time for Kachino and I to face his bosses. Now normally Kachino hands you a weapon for this fight, but that weapon isn't a varmint rifle, so I can't use it, which means things are about to become a lot harder than they need to be. I figured since I can't fight, I'll let Kachino do the fighting. He'll win, right? No, he won't. So I tried the same thing again, but this time I ran away after Kachino died. Lo and behold, the other Omertas killed Big Sal and Nero for me, which I didn't even know could happen, so props to the Omertas for rising up against their evil overlords. Once again, it was time to go back to the Hoover Dam and look into the sweet eyes of my quartermaster. Then it was back to Colonel Moore. She wanted me to kill Mr. House, who has done literally nothing wrong at this point, but okay, cool, whatever I guess. Killing Mr. House is never really a problem for me. After a couple of attempts at infiltrating his secret room and getting blown up, the Securitrons just kind of stop using explosives long enough for me to use the terminal, go to the elevator, and put Mr. House out of his misery? Is he miserable? He looks miserable, but I'm not sure. Who am I to judge? With the greatest man ever of all time dead, it was back to the dam again, this time skipping out my beloved quartermaster and instead going straight to the general. Now, the Brotherhood of Steel is my favorite faction, but their quests in Fallout New Vegas are the worst. Truly, honestly the worst. So know that I'm only going to cover the bits and pieces I need to. First, we have to find a hidden valley, which is easy. Second, we have to go inside of the correct bunker and get hassled by some Brotherhood of Steel bros. Third, I have to become a walking bomb on a mission to get rid of an NCR Ranger, which I accomplished by breaking his radio. And now, for what you've all been waiting for, it's time for the Terrible Threes. This is a regular occurrence in New Vegas for me, not because I enjoy doing the quest, or even enjoy getting the experience. I hate this quest with every fiber of my being. It is literally just for power armor training, and the only other option for that is doing Arcade Ganon's quest, which is a whole nother beast on its own. So for now, we're stuck with the Brotherhood. Let's keep it short. The first set of 3s. I had to recover some holologs from 3 dead squads, one located close to Black Mountain and guarded by centaurs. Easy. One located at the Repcon headquarters, Preachy, and the last one located outside of the Boomer's base, Explodey. Back to Elder McNamara, and he sends me on a second set of 3s. I'm to meet up with his scouts scattered across the Mojave and get their reports. One next to the NCR Correctional Facility, simple. One close to Camp Forlorn Hope, child's play. And one close to Nipton, ouch. Once again, back to McNamara, give him the reports, and he sends me out in the final set of 3s, to collect parts from 3 separate vaults to make sure the Brotherhood's air filtration system stays in line. First up was Vault 3, home of the Fiends. Thankfully, I didn't get mulched immediately upon entry, and I was able to take out most of the Fiends in a drug-fueled rage. Once I was at the bottom, I grabbed the parts that I needed and left, leaving Motor Runner alive even though there was a reward for killing him from the NCR. The next vault I went to was Vault 11, home to mantises and giant rats, both of which, even though typically considered varmints, I decided not to kill. I just ran through the vault, got to the bottom floor, grabbed the part, and left. The final vault was Vault 22, my least favorite vault of all, for obvious reasons. There were mantis and mutant spore carriers here. I do not like either. Thankfully, my repair was over 50, so I could repair the elevator and grab the part I needed quickly, though that didn't make the mantis any less of a pain in the ass. With all of this done, I could return to Elder McNamara, get the air filtration system repaired, and finally lift the lockdown on the Brotherhood of Steel. There was just one last thing to do before they'd train me to wear power armor. I was to go to Black Mountain and put the device on the transmitter, or some other technobabble nonsense. This is usually quite difficult in my challenges due to the Nightkin sniper with the missile launcher, Annabelle, but today I brought my big brain along and shot the missile launcher out of his hands, enabling me to make a quick run into Tabitha's room. I planted the device and fled, thus making me an official member of the Brotherhood of Steel, and the only good perk that comes with this is power armor training. They'll also side with the NCR in the second Battle of Hoover Dam, which is cool I guess, but not nearly worth the trouble I just went through. Now decked out in a full set of T-51 power armor that didn't have the Brotherhood faction tag associated with it, I returned to my most adored quartermaster to buy more ammo. Just imagine now, if you will, the set of a man decked out in power armor, holding a Varmint rifle. Remember, it's not the size of the gun, or something like that. Now it's time to protect President Kimball. This quest used to be a really big pain in the ass for me, but now that I know exactly which steps to take, I can get it done just like that. First and foremost, make sure you grab the NCR engineer jumpsuit from the locker, then wait on top for the President's vertibird to land, then wait for the man to put the bomb on the vertibird right before your very eyes in what might be called the biggest power move of all time. Then politely remove it while the man is looking at you in what might be called the next biggest power move of all time. Then inform Ranger Grant that you found a bomb and removed it, and the President will leave after one of his bodyguards gets shot. Side note, don't take your gun out while you do this, or they'll all start shooting at you, and while this is funny, it is not conducive to saving the President in a timely manner. It was now time to start the second Battle of Hoover Dam. Sort of. I like to drag these things out. My original idea was to level up my character enough to max out my speech as a failsafe for fighting the Legate because, let's be honest, how the hell am I going to kill the Legate with a Varmint rifle? So that's what I attempted to do. I wandered around the Mojave trying to find easy quests I haven't finished yet, checking up with the Great Khans to have them make more drugs for me, and killing some bighorner and ants because they're easy and they give you decent experience. I also hate them. Doing this didn't net me nearly enough experience to level up, and if I was going to get my speech skill high enough to best Lanius, I was going to have to level up at least another 4 times, and that's not happening. Now wandering aimlessly, unsure of what to do, my good friend AJ dared me to go to the Deathclaw Promontory and kill all the Deathclaws there. I repeat, all the Deathclaws with a Varmint rifle. Now, you might immediately think, that's a bad idea. And yes, it is. But this moment of lunacy spawned the best thing in this challenge thus far. So I imagine, as a lot of you know, Deathclaw Promontory is one of the only places you can get Enclave Remnant power armor. This is some of the best armor in the game, hands down. Now what does that mean for me? It means I have an opportunity to actually complete this challenge run. When I arrived at the promontory, I was immediately greeted by Deathclaws. A lot of Deathclaws. So me, being the smart person I am, hopped up on a rock. I figured they'd actually be able to hit me up here, but none of them dared get close enough to attempt it. In fact, sometimes the Deathclaws would run so far that I wouldn't be able to take potshots at them with my armor-piercing rounds. They feared the rock, and their pain was my gain. Eventually, I managed to kill my first Deathclaw. It took way too many armor-piercing rounds that I'd been saving for the Battle of Hoover Dam, and honestly, this wouldn't be worth it in the slightest. But I really wanted that armor. Now, I don't know if this is a well-known fact, or if it's even a fact at all, but when you start rock climbing, the Deathclaws have no idea what to do. So me, being the champion of rock climbing that I am, hopped from rock to rock looking for the Enclave Remnant power armor. After only 2 failed attempts at getting it, I was able to run into a literal nightmare hellscape of Deathclaws, grab the power armor, and jump off the cliff. It was easily one of the most epic things I've ever done. Sadly, the armor is in horrible condition, and you can't repair it with other power armor unless you have the jury-rigging perk, which I didn't have at this point. But I was also very close to being over-encumbered, so I dropped my much better armor at the time to wear the Remnant power armor. If you'd be so kind as to notice, I look rather stupid wearing the Remnant power armor with the T-51 power armor helmet. It's time to remedy that. Yes folks, not only did I get the Remnant power armor, I got the Remnant power armor helmet as well. The helmet was located at a mine close to Jacobstown. Now, I don't think I've ever been in this mine before in any of my previous runs. My friend AJ was still with me at this point and declined to tell me what lay ahead. What a great surprise it was to me when I got absolutely savaged by Cazadors. As you all know and likely fear, Cazadors are far worse than Deathclaws. There was one light in the horizon though. Unlike Deathclaws, crippling a Cazador's wing was much easier than crippling a Deathclaw's leg. That alone would see me through the majority of the mine. Just when I thought it was over and couldn't get any worse, the game literally spawns in more Cazadors when you're closing in on the helmet, and I do not have the firepower to stop them all before they kill me. So now it was time to test my luck. The helmet was located in a small cage right behind where the new Cazadors would spawn in, so I just ran over, opened the cage, and grabbed the helmet. This shouldn't work on paper, but this is Fallout New Vegas we're talking about. While there were plenty of times the Cazadors killed me before I could escape, not to mention the one time I did manage to escape only to realize that I didn't have any anti-venom on me, thankfully New Vegas is not a perfect machine, so I managed to escape with my life, and the helmet. Fast track to me leveling up to 18, getting the jury-rigging perk, and being able to repair the armor to its fullest extent. I was now as tanky as I was going to get for the final fight. The last thing I wanted to do to prepare was teach the cons how to make more drugs for me to buy. The one drug I was focused on making was Slasher, a mixture of Psycho, a Stimpack, and some banana yucca fruit, because vitamins are important. Slasher makes you do 25% more damage and gives you 25 extra damage resistance. This wonderful drug can stack with the 25% damage bonus you get from Psycho and the 25% damage resistance you get from Medics. This would be a fantastic addition to my arsenal, so let's stop wasting time and get to the battle. As usual with an NCR playthrough, I ran through the lower half of the dam to avoid fighting any of the Legion soldiers. When I finally make it topside, I let my NCR buddies do the majority of the work while I hide on the rooftops of the towers. I make it to the halfway point, meet up with the wonderful squad of veteran NCR Rangers, and once again let them do all the heavy lifting. Then make my way to the final pit stop of the game, the Legates camp. Unsurprisingly, the Praetorian guards were an absolute pain in the ass to deal with, though once again, shooting the weapons literally off of their hands came in clutch. That didn't make them any less of a bullet sponge though, and I only had about 300 rounds of armor-piercing ammo left after all was said and done. Time to fight the Legate. First, I took every single drug that I had, except for Cat Eye, and unloaded a couple of armor-piercing rounds into him. That worked about as well as I thought it would. Now, not only was he angry, he also had a bunch of guards that were just as angry. I had to do a lot of running to avoid all the close-range attacks, all while taking potshots at the Legate as often as I could. Now, I don't think I would have had nearly as easy of a time as I did without the help from my friend Insane Frame. He regaled me with a story in which he shot the grenades the Legate threw straight out of his hands, and that helped him win a challenge. So I did just that, and while not the most damaging thing in the world, it sure helped, and before I knew it, the Legate was dead. But now he was no longer the main problem here. That would have been the fact that I needed to kill more guards to initiate Oliver blowing through the gate. My armor was absolutely destroyed at this point, and all of my drugs were starting to wear off. That meant that the veteran legionaries shooting at me did way too much damage, enough damage to make it nearly impossible to do anything except get violently angry IRL. Eventually, in a moment of sheer dumb luck, I was able to kill one of the veterans who was already at half health, and that did the trick. Not gonna lie, immediately after I killed the veteran legionary, I dropped a save because I'm not doing that again. I ran to the gate. My hero, General Lee Oliver, popped out, and I beat Fallout New Vegas with only the Varmint rifle. Wow, I think that was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. The Varmint rifle is literally god-awful. I don't know why everybody loves this thing so much. I guess if you're sneaking, then maybe, but if you're not sneaking, it's just trash. If you decide to try this challenge out for yourself, good luck, you're going to need it. If you enjoyed today's video, like and subscribe as that helps me out bunches. Also, check out some of my other challenge videos I've done. If you like today's, I'm sure you'll like those too. Make sure you visit the Discord and my Patreon, we'd love to have you aboard. I'll leave links below. Special thanks to my patrons Braden Watson, Riley Anderson, Jamie East, and Untamed Pineapple. Y'all are the best. Thanks to 6 weirdly sensitive rats in the trench coat for helping me write this script. They're pleased as punch that we didn't murder all those giant rats in Vault 11. And until next time, stay safe out there, and peace out.